a pioneer Bangladeshi NGO working on environment protection all over the country. So the world is passing through a very difficult time during this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in Bangladesh. The condition is getting worse day by day, and so many people are getting affected in a regular basis. So we all need to be more careful about our life now. However, we know that one more primary species which is getting affected by the COVID-19, and that is the globally vulnerable long-tailed macaque. Hence, our program today is to disseminate the baseline information on this species with a special focus on Bangladesh. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us. And NACOM particularly is grateful to the honorable guest for figuring out the time for this session within their busy schedule. So by this program, we expect to be enlightened about the perilous condition of long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh and globally. So we, according to our plan, after the talks of honorable speakers, we will try to have a small discussion session on what and how we can support these species. So now, for inaugural speech, it's my honor to invite the Executive Director of Nature Conservation Management, NACOM, Dr. S.M. Manzoor Hanan Kansar, who has served the Bangladesh government as the former additional secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and over 30 years of working experience in national planning, policy formation, administration in biodiversity conservation, nature resource management, climate change issues, and related environmental areas. Sir, the floor is yours now. Dr. Manzoor Hanan Kansar.
Yeah, thank you, Tanvir. Let me welcome Dr. Melanie Fries Hansen, Mullah Rezaul Karim, Tariq Kabir, and others who had joined already in this webinar or discussion session. It's my pleasure to invite all of you to listen, particularly from Melanie Fries Hansen and also from Tariq Kabir and Rezaul Karim Mullah, particularly on this long-tailed macaque species. Perhaps you know that we don't have many species in Bangladesh. We have only 10 species of this group, and all of them are basically threatened. We don't have a very good condition of any of the species in Bangladesh, and particularly this one and the slow loris one is also suffering a lot. So this project basically Melanie Fries Hansen is working with an international long-tailed macaque project, which is very good for us to see the status of these species and to identify the challenges now that species is facing for the conservation and to continue their generation in this habitat. So this project could give us a good guideline for the Bangladeshi government, for the forest department, for our researchers to do more work on conservation of these species. I know this in this project, Dr. Augustine Fantis also involved. He has also supporting this project through this webinar. I would like to thank him for providing that support to this project, and particularly including Bangladesh for taking initiative in order to conserve this long-tailed macaque in our habitat. So I don't want to take more time. I would like to invite Mr. Rezaul Karim first, right, Tanvir? Okay, so let me hand over to Tanvir. He can coordinate the whole program. Okay, Tanvir, you can continue.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words and valuable information. Now it's time to know more about the long-tailed macaques and their perilous condition in Bangladesh. So I would like to welcome Mr. Tariq Kabir, who is now a PhD candidate of University Science Malaysia and a wildlife biologist. He is the member of IUCN section on small apes, and his major interests are on primate conservation, community-based wildlife conservation. He worked for Bangladesh Forest Department previously as a wildlife and biodiversity conservation officer and wildlife biologist of IUCN Bangladesh. So Mr. Tariq Kabir, the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvi. Can you share me?
Yes, we can see you. We can see the screen, the presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Tariq
Okay.
Kabir, can you just make it full screen? It's like
Okay,
an.
sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to my presentation on Burmese long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. I am Tariq Kabir, PhD candidate of University Science, Malaysia. If you have any queries, please write me by email, or you can also write in chat box. The subspecies of long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh is also known as Burmese long-tailed macaque. It is also locally known as Karela Banor or Kakavu Banor. That means rabbiting macaque. Burmese long-tailed macaque is an intelligent subspecies of macaque of long-tailed macaque reported in Bangladesh. The distributional range of Burmese long-tailed macaque extended to Bangladesh, PDR, Laos, PDR, Myanmar, and West Central Thailand. Burmese long-tailed macaque is a critically endangered species of Bangladesh and data deficient globally, but long-tailed macaque is vulnerable globally. So I wish to provide a short overview of Burmese long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. And I had conducted questionnaire-based interview from the local community during my study period in 2010 and 2011. And this study provided that the Burmese long-tailed macaque was distributed to Sabrang of Teknaf coast and Chakaria Sunderbans. Sabrang, Hoikang, Boretuli, Kerontuli, Damdumia, Jadimura, Nila, Jimunkhali, Palungkhali, and Balkhali areas of the Nap River coastal belt was the home of Burmese long-tailed macaque. Population declined at Balukhali, Palungkhali, Nila, and some parts of the Chakaria Sunderbans during the mid-1980s. Macaque were exterminated from Hoikong area and also rapidly declining in other areas during the 1986 and 1991. Some scattered group were survived at Noboi Ekot, that means Chakaria Sunderbans, Damdumia, Joledea in late 1990s. Here is the past distributional range of Burmese long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. Top one is the Chakaria Sunderbans, and middle one is the Tumrut to Hoikong area, and last one is Hoikong to Sabrang area. And some past distributional range of Burmese long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. First one is Chorondip at Chakaria Sunderbans, Nobboi Ekot, some degraded mangrove vegetation at Chakaria Sunderbans, and some mangrove vegetation at Hoikong, and mangrove vegetation at Jimunkhali area of Teknaf coastal belt. Hassan first reported a Burmese long-tailed macaque in 1981, and he counted 253 individuals at the Hoikong and adjacent of the Hoikong areas. 13 and 17 individuals from Chakaria Sunderbans were reported by Firoz. Hassan and Firoz also reported 8 individuals in 2 groups from Nap River coastal belt. Hassan and Kabir reported about 6 individuals at Kerontuli in 2009 and 10. Kabir Hassan also reported 3 individuals in on group in Teknaf coast, which is situated near the Teknaf port. There is also chance to occur some hybrid population at Maheshkhali Wildlife Sanctuary, but during my study, but I did not find any hybrid population at Maheshkhali Wildlife Sanctuary during my study period. And now only single individual is surviving at Kerontuli area of Teknaf coast, near the Teknaf port. And here I wish to focus on some ecological aspect of long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. This study was conducted during the time period of 2010 to 2011, which was provided that macaque used 7.9 hectare area as a home range, and this area is a highly degraded mangrove habitat. And macaque Burmese long-tailed macaque was folivorous in nature, and they live on leaves of 80 species of plant item and animal matter. Animal matters include mangrove slug, orange crab, mud crab, and mud skipper. They also consume fruit leaves of Avicennia alba, Avicennia officinalis, Sonaraceae apetala, Aegialitis rotundifoliae, Dalbergia spinosa, Acanthus illicifolius, and Aurea quacta. That means urid ghash. And this is the crab hunting behavior of Burmese long-tailed macaque holding a huge crabs. And some feeding behavior observation during my study period, macaque hunting crabs at the inundated mangrove forest, and mangrove slag is one of the another major important food items of the Burmese long-tailed macaque. Macaque consumed leaves of Dalbergia spinosa, Sonaraceae apetala, and Avicennia species. Major region of local extinction of long-tailed macaque was the conversion of the mangrove forest into the fishing project. During the 1988-89, most of the lands of coastal areas were given on lease to the people who converted the mangrove forest into shrimp project or fishing project. And rapid expansion of salt pans at Hoikong area and Hoikong and Nila and adjacent to Hoikong and Nila areas, destruction of the mangrove forest. Another major region of the rapid decline of Burmese long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh cyclone was the cyclone of 1994, which was hit mainly at Teknaf Upazila. And Burmese long-tailed macaque, as you know, Burmese long-tailed macaque is a good swimmer. When the most of the macaque habitat were destructed, possibly some macaque were migrated to nearby Bangladesh. My questionnaire survey revealed that some population still exists near the Myanmar persons, which is very close to Bangladesh and macaque human conflict. We can develop a strategic action plans with a national committee to save the Burmese long-tailed macaque of Bangladesh. So for this strategic action plan, we include the extensive population survey, habitat analysis, and we also can identify the possible habitat where we can reintroduce the new macaque species, and only we have the only one way to reintroduce the Burmese long-tailed macaque in nature of Bangladesh, that we can brought some Burmese long-tailed macaque from nearby Myanmar population, and definitely we should follow to total process or procedure to reintroduction of the long-tailed macaque to Bangladesh areas. So at that sense, we can improve some habitat prior to the reintroduction process. And another we hope that we can improve some mangrove forest at Phoikong and Maheshkhali areas. Local people inform us that some macaque groups is still living nearby the Myanmar, which and the distance between the Bangladeshi part and Myanmar part is not very far away, only 50 or 60 meters at Maheshkhali Phoikong area. So if we improve our habitat, some macaque attacked in our Bangladesh mangrove habitat. And I really gratefully acknowledge to Dr. M. Farideh Hassan, who supervising this research, and Bangladesh Forest Department provided necessary support to conduct this field work. I also acknowledge to NUFU project for financial support to conduct this research. And finally, thank you, NACOM, for organizing this event. And this is a very important event to prevent the local extinction of this species from Bangladesh. Only a single individual, finally I conclude the remark that only a single individual of Burmese long-tailed macaque is now living at Kiranteli area of Teknaf coastal belt. So if we do not focus much about the Burmese long-tailed macaque strategic action plan or further initiative, this macaque will be almost it will be vanished. It also vanished, but if we did not take initiative, it will be vanished from forever. And I am expecting some initiative from Bangladesh Forest Department. Mullah Rezal Kuring sir is here. So wildlife and nature conservation circles will take initiative to reintroduce this macaque at appropriate habitat. Habitat selection is a very important for reintroduction. So relevant organization or ministry and a combination of scientists will be involved in this event. And finally, thank you to all for your time, and you can also write me if you have any queries or any questions, and I will try to provide the answer of this question. And thank you to all for your time and listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Said Kabir, for your very insightful presentation. And we have learned that not only the habitat destruction, maybe cyclone has an impact on the population. And that is really very important, but unpublished data. We will look forward to conserve these species in Bangladesh. And thank you for mentioning the recommendations that we need to think about it and to conserve these species. Now I would like to invite Dr. Melanie Friis-Hansen, a postdoctoral researcher of University of Copenhagen and a research affiliate of Oxford Brookes University. She is the coordinator and co-founder of the Long-tailed Macaque Project, a global initiative seeking to understand the status and human macaque interface of long-tailed macaque through the population census surveys, trade investigation, behavior observations, and ethnographic research. The project is a collaboration with researcher institutions and NGOs from many parts of the world, especially from the long-tailed macaque habitat countries. She did her PhD on the long-tailed macaque. So it's my pleasure to invite you, Dr. Melanie.
Thank you very much, Tanvir, and thank you so much for that amazing talk, Kabir. That was very, very interesting. Also slightly bleak, I will say, but it's great to hear what you suggest for recommendations and to also hear all of your interesting observations. I'll just share my screen. Okay, let's see. So can everybody see the screen? Tanvir, is it okay?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yes,
It's okay. Melanie, go ahead. It's
So
okay.
I'll just give a brief overview of the project and of the long-tailed macaque in general. And then afterwards, we can have a small discussion about the long-tailed macaque. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for having me. This was a wonderful invitation. I'm very happy to be here to be able to talk a bit about the long-tailed macaque, which I'm very interested in and interested in the conservation of this important species. I've now for some months worked together with Tanvir and Sabit and Shajib and Shimul, and now I also have gotten to know Tariq, and Hassan has also been a part of the project. So I'm now getting to know a lot more about the Bangladesh long-tailed macaque, which I'm very, very excited about, and I'm excited to learn from all of you. I do believe that the recommendations for future efforts should, of course, and also the future efforts should be driven by all the local conservationists that I've now gotten to know. So I'll just give a brief overview of the international project and the international plans. So the Long-tailed Macaque project is a collaboration, and we're now over 70 collaborators across the world. And we had a great workshop last week where we got even closer together and talked about what we want to see for the future in terms of conserving the long-tailed macaque and also increasing its protection. This is a research project, a conservation project, and a communication and outreach project. You can find us soon on our new website, which will open next week. And you can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. And do contact me through there if you have any questions. You can, of course, also get my email through Tanvir. The project is funded and supported by Princeton University, the University of Copenhagen, the Rewild organization, Animal Protection Denmark, and Nanyang Technological University Singapore. Professor Augustine Fuentes, Associate Professor Michael Gummert, and Associate Professor Elodie Briefer are a great part of this project. So the objectives of the project is to ensure local participation and capacity building, and in the habitat countries, in the range countries of the long-tailed macaque, and to provide contemporary population size and distribution estimates, and to provide an estimate of the extent of the trade in long-tailed macaques. Now, when we have all of that information, then finally, our goal is to engage actively in communication with the policymakers and share the information with them to create sustainable management plans and trade policies for this species. And hopefully after that, we'll dive more into understanding the human-macaque interface and the cultural differences in the long-tailed macaque populations. The project status currently is that we're looking into different distribution and population census surveys across Southeast Asia, all driven by local scientists. And what we do from here, what I mostly do, is to coordinate and train and apply for funding. And then hopefully at some point I'll be out there as well. But again, local researchers are driving all the projects, which is great because, yeah, you know the places. And so in Bangladesh, the next step is for Tanvir and his team to look into the distribution and the population size of the long-tailed macaque in the Teknaf Wildlife Reserve in Bangladesh. And we're very excited for this. And of course, though, for all of the projects and everything that we have ongoing, we have to consider the current pandemic, and we don't want anyone to take any chances. We don't want to spread anything. Another reason why it's only local researchers conducting local work is that we don't want to travel across borders and spread this virus. So we're just waiting now to see when it's possible to go out and do the work in the different countries. We're also working on trade surveys and trying to create databases for all the information that is already out there. And the long-tailed macaque is vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. There are 9 subspecies under the species, and they are distributed across Southeast Asia. The map that I have here is outdated, severely outdated, but it's the one we have and the one we use. And this is what we want to look into as well. We want to update this map to see where the long-tailed macaque actually is. And the long-tailed macaque is possibly highly endangered in many areas, at least some of the island endemics. So there are 6 island endemic subspecies, which are facing great threats as well. So, but also the long-tailed macaque, except for being maybe endangered in some areas, is an extremely interesting species. It has great behavioral diversity. There's great behavioral and morphological diversity between the subspecies. And it's a very interesting species from many different research fields. So we are mostly interested in research in the field, of course, and research into the biology, the ecology, and the human-macaque interfaces, and of course the trade. But there's another research field where long-tailed macaques are being used highly, and that's biomedical research. So it's also very interesting in terms of the biomedical research. The long-tailed macaque is very ecologically diverse. It's a predator, it's a prey, it's a seed disperser. It can swim and dive and fish underwater. It can climb on trees and it can live on ground, which means that it has many ecological roles in many different ecosystems, which is also one of the reasons to conserve it. It might be very highly needed to conserve and restore habitats to have the long-tailed macaque in the area. The Burmese long-tailed macaque is very coastal in many areas, and as you could see from Tariq's presentation, he showed a lot of very nice photos about where you can see that it employs the mangroves. Many people have done a lot of great work on the long-tailed macaque, but it's been some years. So what we mostly refer to now is the work of Fuden, Corlett, and Lucas, and then Gummert's Monkeys on the Edge, or et al. Monkeys on the Edge from 2011. The long-tailed macaque is also a synanthrope, which means that it can inhabit and exploit anthropogenic habitat. Just gonna, someone need, just gonna unmute or mute someone. Oh, I couldn't. Okay. So it is very able to survive in the Anthropocene. It has a lot of amazing traits that enable it. Because of its adaptability and its plasticity, it can survive in what we call the Anthropocene. So humans moving more into the natural areas, and then these human-macaque interfaces are increasing. And it is able to survive in them, but only if it's allowed to stay and to also, of course, have the more natural or the forested and the mangrove habitats to search for food. One of the main issues with the human-macaque interfaces increasing is the competition over resources between humans and macaques, which can sometimes lead to negative interactions and sometimes persecution of the species. Now, a lot of researchers have looked into this as well, and there's a lot of interesting information out there. The long-tailed macaque, this is another thing that it also can do. So it can use tools. It has a great cultural diversity, especially the Burmese long-tailed macaque is a tool user. And you can see here a hybrid between a Burmese and a common long-tailed macaque using tools to open a snail in Thailand, and this is from Lydia Luntz's work. There's also been done a lot of work on tool use in the Burmese long-tailed macaque, and by Gommert and Malai Vijitland. And there's also been done a lot of work on stone handling by Leka and Peterson, which is the common long-tailed macaque. So here you see some subspecies difference in tool use and tool handling, or stone handling. And what I would like to know is if there's tool use in Bangladesh, because I haven't been able to find anything regarding that. And that would be very interesting to do some research on, unless you might know, Tariq, if they use tools to forage in the mangroves. So the threats to this species is mostly the unfounded perceptions. So people keep on thinking that this is a abundant species, is everywhere. And it's a pest species, so it needs to be exterminated, it needs to be moved, it needs to be culled. And also a lot of people do not believe it has conservation value because it's not critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. But as I've said until now, I mean, there's a lot of conservation value, especially in terms of habitat restoration, habitat regeneration. The long-tailed macaque is a highly needed species in many areas. Also, when we talk about it as a pest and a weed species, that leads people to think that it's a species, yeah, that needs to be exterminated. But the reason why we say so is actually because it's such a highly intelligent species. So it is able to move into these human habitats. It's not because it's a bad species. This is just because it's a very intelligent species, and we should learn from this. And maybe the long-tailed macaque can tell us more about how humans and wildlife can coexist in the future and how we can be better at conservation. We've recently reviewed the long-tailed macaque in a paper that I cite below here, which is open access. The trade is also a great threat to the long-tailed macaque, and we are afraid that the trade has increased greatly during the pandemic, both for the biomedical research as it is needed in vaccine trials, but also for pets and for meat. And also the habitat loss and lack of habitat protection leads to trade. And the negative interactions with humans actually also leads to trade, as some people see it as a conflict mitigation technique to just remove the long-tailed macaques and sell them to biomedical research. So this is also what we are fighting. There's been some research into trade as well, but the general problem with the macaque, or the long-tailed macaque, is the lack of protection. So because people think it's abundant, they do not protect it in the many different countries. It might actually be protected by law, but there is no local law enforcement regarding this species. So the recommendations in general for the long-tailed macaque is to conduct more research into the population size and distributions across Southeast Asia, to be able to provide this information to the policymakers and the management officials, so that we can have more sustainable conservation plans for the species. We would also like to know more about the trade. What is actually going on right now? Is it legal or illegal? We see that there are quite a lot of confiscations currently. So we need to kind of access all of that information and gather it. We would also like to know more about the human macaque interfaces. Can humans and macaque coexist, and what are the local attitudes and perceptions of long-tailed macaques? We believe that that is very important for the conservation as well. So in terms of the recommendations for Bangladesh, I cannot provide, of course, any recommendations for any local area or any other country, and not even for my own, but because there are no long-tailed macaques here. But it's also very important that it's you, the local researchers, that provide the recommendations for Bangladesh, and that you collaborate, because you know about the local culture and the political situation in particular. And I think it's very important to investigate first how many long-tailed macaques are left, where are they, and also what are their current threats. But also you need to know what are the local attitudes towards the species, because it will be very difficult to conserve them if you do not have the local support. And if you can have then conservation actions, as Tariq mentioned, then it is very important to know, to have respect for the local culture and the political situation, especially in the area where we find the local macaques at the current time. I'm not sure what is possible in terms of collaborating with Myanmar, having maybe connection between the populations in Myanmar and the population in Bangladesh would be a great possibility, to have corridors that they could actually move and in that way be connected. But again, this is all something you would know more about, and I'm very excited to hear about your ideas and your plans for the future of the long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh. We are very committed to this project and to the species, and we're always here if we can help in any way. Thank you again for listening, and thank you to you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here, as I mentioned. And yes, please, any questions if you have them, and otherwise I would like to hear what you all have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melanie, for very insightful presentation. It's full of information that we need to know. Now we are already past about 40 minutes, so we have only few minutes to the question and answer session and 5 minutes to discussion on the what to do for conserving the long-tailed macaques in Bangladesh. So do you have any question? Please write it to our chat box or just unmute you to ask the question. Please go ahead. Do anybody have any question? If you have any question, please write it to the chat box or just directly ask unmute you. So
Can I ask a question?
yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Munjurul Khan, I was wondering what you see as the solutions for conserving the long-tailed macaque in Bangladesh.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, I think this question can be answered more appropriately by Mullah Rezaul Karim, because he's now working with the Department of Forest. He's the conservator of forest for wildlife biodiversity conservation. So, but my initial thought, actually, the work you are doing for the survey and also the work you are doing for identifying the challenges, particularly from Bangladesh habitat, that actually would be very helpful for our policymaker and also for our wildlife biologist and the forest department to make a long-term conservation plan for long-tailed macaque. Because without knowing the problem, without knowing the issues, we know the issues like in very superficially, not in depth. But you, from your presentation and also work from Tanvir and also Tariq and others, along with your work, would give us a very good idea of what are the issues, what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities for Bangladesh to conserve these species. So the government of Bangladesh is very willing to conserve the biodiversity. We have a Wildlife Conservation Act. We have an independent monitoring system within the forest department, particularly focusing on wildlife, in which our Mullah Rezaul Karim is the conservator of forest to looking after the wildlife activities in Bangladesh. Now we need knowledge, and also we need to share the experience from other countries, what they are doing in order to conserve the species, because the issues and problems has a similarities, like the anthropogenic interaction is everywhere. So what you are doing to minimize the conflict of anthropogenic interaction, what you are doing for the future conservation of these species. So if we know that thing, and also if we evaluate our issues and problems and opportunities, then our forest department and also the people could actually better understand the issues and can go for the conservation. So that's my first reaction to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would like. Yeah, I would very much like to hear your suggestion, Mr. Mullah Karim.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a few
please, Rezaul Karim.
Yes, sir. I'm sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, at first,
Can I have a little introduction?
No.
Convey my thanks to everybody who invited me for this valuable event. Actually, one thing I want to clear to everybody that till today I am not the conservator of wildlife management circle. Till today I am working as the conservator of social forestry circle Jashore, and I am going to join as conservator of wildlife for next week, inshallah. So I shall take my necessary decision, and I shall expand my hands to work for the conservation of long-tailed macaque and every species which is in our country. And at that time, I will be very much clear what to do or not. I think this is my first impression now. And one thing I want to mention here that Bangladesh Forest Department is very much committed to conserve every species. And in our country, wildlife management and wildlife conservation subjects is very new to our country. It is started only 10 to 12 years before, and from then we are looking what to do or not for wildlife and every species management. One thing it is clear now that in our country, long-tailed macaque is already been diminishing. It is known from the Tariq Kabir's presentation and other necessary notes from here. So I want to ask one thing from Melanie, that if we want to reintroduce here, what kind of support you can provide us? It is my first words, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on this, and good luck with your new job in the coming weeks. I personally think that there is a lot to look into before you can reintroduce long-tailed macaques in Bangladesh. I think you need to know much more about the threats that have caused the current or the decline in population size, and assess if the threats are still there. I also believe you need to look into the habitat suitability. So if most of the mangrove is gone, there might not be enough resources for the populations. And then you also need to look into the local human population attitudes and perception of the species. So are they supportive of a reintroduction of the long-tailed macaque? And if they are, is it even a possibility with the current area? So I think there's a lot to look into and a lot to consider before starting an introduction of long-tailed macaques, and maybe if it could be possible to create a corridor between the long-tailed macaque population in Bangladesh and the most northern population in Myanmar, then that might be a possibility as well. And then the macaques could themselves move back and forth as appropriate according to the resources and according to the space. But again, I mean, from my point of view, I think we need to know a lot more about the support from local populations or local people of reintroductions, because that is actually one of the main keys as well for a reintroduction project, is to ensure you have the local support, genuine local support to be able to make it work. So personally, I would think that a reintroduction project would be it would take some time before you could reach that point. But of course, that is completely up to you.
Okay, thank you.
And then if that is something at some point that would be a possibility, then we would, of course, help in any way possible.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Dr. মজুর রহমান খান স্যার,
Hmm.
আপনি কাইন্ডলি যদি একটু হ্যান্ডেল করেন, ডিসকাশন সেশনটা কন্টিনিউ করবো আমরা খুব শীঘ্রই। শেষে মডারেশন করেন স্যার, যদি আমাদের উদ্দেশ্যে ফাইনালি আবার কিছু বলেন।
We'll continue our discussion session.
জি স্যার, আর 5 মিনিট আমরা এটা শেষ করি স্যার, আর কোনো
Okay.
সাজেশন যদি থাকে। সো
Do
উই
you
হ্যাভ
do you
ওয়ান
have
মোর
any
কোশ্চেন।
question from the floor?
Yes sir, we have one more question. Nice presentation, Melanie. That question is from Shojib Bishas. One thing is that any disease responsible for decreasing their population in Bangladesh? Melanie, do you have any response to this question?
That is very, very difficult for me to say. I think that would need some investigation from your side and to see what is the current level of human macaque interactions, and if there has been any diseases in the area over time. If there's been local extirpation of the macaques because of diseases, then you would probably have seen that disease, or might have seen that disease in the human population as well at some point. So I would not know. You would have to investigate that. Personally, I do not believe that that would be the case. I do think that Tariq presented quite a lot of reasons for decline, especially the lack of habitat, or the habitat destruction, the mangrove destruction. So that might be more the case, the lack of habitat. And then I don't know more about the threats in terms of the human macaque interactions in Bangladesh.
Another thing is that, is there any records from other countries, any disease responsible for their decreasing their population?
Not really. I mean, that could definitely be the case if they were to contract a disease from humans. Long-tailed macaques are definitely carriers of a lot of diseases that humans can catch as well, and it is quite dangerous to interact closely with them because of the possibility of disease transmission. So that is not to be taken lightly, that is for sure. But the largest reasons for population declines in other countries that we see are habitat destruction, and then it's harvesting and hunting of the long-tailed macaque. And then we've also seen natural disasters such as tsunamis and cyclones that can take out large populations at one time. Fortunately, for example, in the Nicobar Islands, the population was able to bounce back after a tsunami. It just took some years. But that is a possibility if the population is left alone and does have other habitat possibilities to survive in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shojib Bishas, for your. Okay, now Mullah, would you like to say anything? Rizal Karim?
Yes, sir. Sir,
Okay.
Yes. Actually, as I am going to take the charge of Wildlife Conservation Circle, so I think it is a very important session for me, because long-tailed macaque is one of the very important species who is diminishing from our country, and this type of many species, I got the list that is near about 21 to 22, and I shall try to work for them, and how can I reintroduce them, and how can I conserve the endangered and vulnerable species groups. I shall try from myself, and as this type of research and study works are doing some of the people and some of the organizations, some of the universities. So I think it is very much supportive to me, and after taking the charge, I think it will be very much helpful also. And I want to convey my thanks to everybody to engage myself to know this type of subject matters, and in future I want to get support from all of you, and also I especially want the support from Melanie and our honorable Manzurul Rahman Khan sir, and I know that sir is always ready to support me. It is not me, that is. So I think this type of session will be very much helpful to me and helpful to wildlife conservation in Bangladesh. And I think this is my concluding words. To see you again, and I shall be available when you call me for this type of event and program. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mullah Rezaul Karim, for your willingness to do some good work for the betterment of wildlife conservation in Bangladesh. This is actually the spirit we want from you. I think all of our young biologists, including the international supporter like Melanie and other big professors, and also those who are working on the field, I'm sure they would like to be involved with us in future for conservation of these threatened species, because this is the work we are doing is for betterment of the whole world. I mean, conserving one species does not necessarily mean that will also give the benefit to only particular this country. This will give benefit to the whole world community. So, in fact, the environment is in total. We need to think in total, not necessarily fragmented way. So, thank you that government has posted you in these positions. When I saw the order, I was really happy that now we have a very good person, very positive attitude that you have. I have seen you from last, I think last 20 years or so. So I see there's a very good for us. You know, Melanie is the guy who has a very positive attitude towards the work, which is very much needed from a policymaker like him. If we have him in these positions, I think we can work together and we can also do some good work for Bangladesh as well as for in this region. If we do a good work in Bangladesh, that can be shared with our regional countries, which is a good for the betterment of the species conservation in this region. So I'm sure Melanie and her team would be willing to work with us. Our team, Tanvir, Tariq, and others will also be available. Tanvir is always available from our organization. I am also available. We can sit together and we can think of what we can do for the conservation of these species, because this is important species for us and we need to conserve it. And now we realize we need to consider the challenges and opportunity. If we know properly the challenges and opportunity, I think it would be easy for all of us to conserve these species. Over to Tanvir.
Thank you very much, sir. We are at the end of this seminar session. I think we had a very good discussion today regarding this species. After a very long time, Bangladesh is had a very good discussion to save this long-tailed macaque, which is at on the edge of extinction nationally. But we have found so many options now to think ahead, to explore more, to save these species. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today and give us an opportunity to be enlightened about this species and to work for their conservation in Bangladesh. So for the final words, if Dr. Manzur Khan sir, if you want to say something and in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Melanie, for giving us a time and to provide an international overview on these particular species. Thank you very much for your time and energy and effort in order to educate us on this species. Thank you, Mullah Rezaul Karim. Thank you for your time, and let me welcome you particularly to become the conservator of forests wildlife wing, and we'll extend all of our support to you. Wherever you need our support, please let us know, and we'll definitely will work with you. Thank you, Tariq Kabir, for your nice presentation, and also providing our view of the species from Bangladesh habitat, which is very much necessary for all of us to know the issues. And thank you all the participants who has the making the time and also listening to us and providing feedback and question. Let me also welcome all of you to provide, if you have any concern, any issues, you can send email, any question, you can send email to Tanvir or to Nakom, and then that would be really good for us to know your things. And also I would like to invite all of you to take minimum measures to conserve biodiversity in Bangladesh. That's my personal appeal to everybody. Please do some work every day, a small work every day, to conserve biodiversity in Bangladesh. That actually can lead to a big work at the end of the day, if we do everybody a small work for conservation of biodiversity in this country, because we have huge population, big population, less natural resources. That actually the most conflicting area to use the natural resources, in which we also destroy our biodiversity. So please let me finish by saying that thank you very much for joining, and hopefully we'll meet again for this kind of discussion in future. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, everybody.
Sir, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Melanie.
you very much,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.